Hello, and welcome back to Felony Spectator. I am your host, Heather. On today's episode, we're talking about Mark Twitchell, who once compared himself to the fictional character Dexter Morgan. If you don't know who that is, Dexter Morgan was a fictional serial killer in the show Dexter. It's basically a crime drama based on a man named Dexter, who was a blood pattern analyzer for Miami Metro Police, but is also a serial killer. His adoptive father was a police officer and noticed that Dexter had a sociopathic tendencies, so he encouraged Dexter to channel his urges to kill bad guys. People who are not convicted themselves for murder due to getting off on legal technicalities. Dexter was a bit gruesome. It was a decent show. I watched a few seasons of it, but it came with criticism due to its violence and also the influence it had on real-life killers like Mark Twitchell. Let's get into discussing the case. Mark Twitchell was born July 4th, 1979 in Edmonton, Alberta. Mark loved movies and always dreamed of being a filmmaker. He would attend and graduate from the Radio and Television Arts program at the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology in the year 2000. In 2006, he directed a Star Wars fan film, a movie called Secrets of the Rebellion, where Jeremy Bulloch cameoed in. It was never officially released, but it gathered local attention for the amount of talent that was used in the props department and costume design. Replica suits were created that were very realistic compared to the real-life Star Wars films. And while Mark was passionate about making movies and writing scripts, he also loved costumes and dressing up. He had won awards himself for costumes he wore at different events, mostly Halloween events. Mark would start a production company called Express Entertainment, where he had investors who gave him thousands of dollars to film a horror movie called The House of Cards. The movie, The House of Cards, was about a killer who lures men off of online dating sites and kills them. I should mention that a teaser of the film was recorded in a rented-out garage in Edmonton. In October of 2008, Mark, a married man, would log onto his dating profile on Plenty of Fish and would confirm a date he made with another man named Johnny Altinger. Johnny was originally from White Rock, British Columbia, but lived in Edmonton working at an oil field manufacturer in their office. Johnny would be described as tall, quiet, but also affectionate and giving. He loved motorcycles and was an avid paintballer who owned a few guns, but his first hobby would be computers. Family would say that Johnny was the original computer whiz. He had been one of the first to own a Commodore 64, was online before anyone even knew what the World Wide Web was, and was very savvy when it came to technology. Back in the 80s, Johnny was part of a group of other computer-savvy people who used modems to connect with others around the city. This used to be called bulletin boards or BBS, which would be the foundation of what we now know as the web. Johnny met a lot of people this way and would go on to meeting many of these people in person. Occasionally, these groups would meet up at a pool hall or a movie theater. Many of Johnny's best friends were met online. So it was no surprise when Johnny started to do online dating. The computer was a place where he felt very comfortable. He opened a profile on Plenty of Fish and had met a few women over the years. Then, on October 10th, 2008, thinking he was meeting up with a woman who he had been chatting with online named Jen, Johnny would tell his friend Dale that he was really excited. Jen seemed really nice, she was beautiful, and quite forward, meaning he was probably going to get lucky that night. He did mention in the conversation that he was given a strange list of directions to a garage instead of her address. And then he jokingly emailed these directions to Dale saying, "If anything happens to me, this is where I went." Another strange thing was that his date didn't disclose her phone number either. Every time Johnny asked for more details about where she lived or her phone, she'd skirt around the subject or give him excuses. This neighborhood, according to Jen, didn't have a lot of street parking, and everyone's garages were at the back of the house off the back alley. Residents would often park in the alley at their garages. Jen also lived in a basement suite, and the only way to access it was through the backyard. According to her, to get to the backyard, you'd have to go through the garage as there wasn't a gate on the fence. When Johnny arrived at the garage, he would then call Dale a second time and told him that this girl wasn't actually there, so he was just leaving to go home. But there was a man there who claimed to be a filmmaker. He explained that the garage was set up as a movie set, which had a full kill room similar to the show Dexter, where there was a table in the middle of the room covered in plastic sheeting. Plastic sheeting covered some of the walls, and it was rather darkly lit. This man had also shown him a few props, including a replica handgun. He wasn't totally sure what to make of this, but the man mentioned that Jen, his date, was on her way and told Johnny that he could stay, but he wasn't sure how long she was going to be. Johnny was a bit annoyed because he didn't have her phone number and he thought he might have just wasted his time. So he said that he was going to go home and he would message Jen through Plenty of Fish. Less than an hour later, Dale would get an email from Johnny saying, quote, "She's home now, I'm headed over again, hee, end quote. And that would be the last time Dale communicated directly with Johnny. Within a day or so, Dale and many of Johnny's other friends would receive an email from Johnny saying, quote, "I've met an extraordinary woman named Jen who has offered to take me on a nice, long tropical vacation. We'll be staying in her winter home in Costa Rica, phone number soon to follow," end quote. And the email went on to say that he wouldn't be back in town till around December 10th, but he would be checking his email. Deborah Tykerob, someone who had met Johnny 2 years prior off Plenty of Fish, also received this strange email. And alarm bells went off for her because she hadn't spoken to Johnny since the summer when she told him she wasn't interested in a romantic relationship with him. Why was he emailing her now, telling her all about this? It was very confusing and not something she expected to see from Johnny. Johnny's employer also got an email, which was a resignation letter. Strangely, the email didn't contain contact information or an address to send his last paycheck. When his employer emailed back requesting his forwarding information, he never heard back. This was completely out of character of Johnny. The whole wording of his email didn't sound at all like him. Johnny was the type of person to tell jokes or use smiley faces, and this email just had a different tone and was missing his usual lightheartedness. Dale would also note that Johnny didn't even like warm places and stayed out of the sun. A few more days would go by and Johnny's MSN Messenger status was updated to say, quote, "I've got a one-way ticket to heaven and I'm not coming back," end quote. Again, this whole situation bothered Dale because Dale had plans with him on October 12th, Thanksgiving Sunday, with Johnny to get motorcycle lessons. Johnny had never bailed on him before and he was just acting really strange. Another friend would reach out to Johnny and ask for photos of his trip in Costa Rica and ask him where he was staying, but those emails would never be answered. Dale, Johnny's friend, knew in his gut that something was wrong. It seemed so odd to him that Johnny would meet this woman at a garage with no address, then basically disappear. So Dale called the police. But police said that they needed more evidence that Johnny was actually missing and not on vacation with a new girlfriend. So some friends would break into his apartment to see if there was any indication that Johnny had packed up and left, or if Johnny was there and in some kind of trouble. They find that Johnny's passport was still there, even though he had allegedly gone to Costa Rica. His suitcase and shaving kit were still there, and there was dirty dishes in the sink. It was kind of a mess, and it didn't seem like he had packed up and left for a holiday at all. They also noted that Johnny left his motorcycle uncovered, which he would never ever do. He loved his motorcycle and treated it extremely well. If Johnny was going to go on a holiday, he surely would have asked Dale or someone to look after his bike. So they immediately called police again and insisted that they needed to open an investigation. Edmonton police would return to the apartment and notice it didn't seem like anything was amiss at first sight. There was no signs of a struggle, but it also didn't look like someone packed up and left for a holiday either. They would grab some of Johnny's underwear, a ball cap, electric razor, deodorant, and a bathrobe to send off for DNA. Strangely, police also noted that the computer desk had been disturbed. They ended up taking his computer to analyze it, but there was also a blank spot where a printer would have been, with a little bit of dust surrounding the location. Police would also look for Johnny's car in various parkades at airports, talk to a lot of his friends, and it really did seem like Johnny completely vanished. Edmonton police would use the directions that Johnny gave Dale to the garage and spoke with the people living in the house. Those people informed police that the garage was rented out separate from the house, and it was rented to a filmmaker named Mark Twitchell. After tracking down Mark, he had let police know he did make a movie recently in the garage, but he hadn't used it much since then. When police asked to take a quick look in the garage, Mark noticed that the lock had been changed and mentioned that two of his friends had keys to the garage as well, who were in his production crew, Mike Young and Jay Howinston. Maybe they put the new lock there. But Mark allowed police to break the lock and do a quick look around in the garage, and it was mostly empty. There was some typical garage-type items, like a shelf with odds and ends, a tire, there was a metal table, and a metal pipe. The only items that could be suspicious was bleach, paper towels, and duct tape. But again, it is a garage, so not completely out of the ordinary. The police, however, had a bad feeling about this garage and Mark. How strange was it that the last known place Johnny was gonna go was a rented out garage? And then he just disappears. With this case basically going nowhere, they decided to bring Mark down to the station for some further questions. And they were also applying for a search warrant for the garage to see if there was any other evidence they missed during their walkthrough. During Mark's first interview, he seemed like a nice guy. Mark was clean-shaven, chatty, and didn't appear to be outwardly lying about anything. He said he didn't know anyone named Jen and claims to never have met Johnny either. Mark did tell them about his latest film, though, a psychological thriller that used a lot of fake blood, which might have stained the garage floor. Even though police had applied for a search warrant for the garage, they also asked Mark if he would let them in again for a second look, and he agreed. Police were suspicious that he didn't know Jen, even though Johnny had said to Dale there was a filmmaker who told Johnny Jen was returning before Johnny emailed saying he was going back to the garage. While at the garage, police would notice that there was a steel drum which they didn't take note of before. The drum was also definitely used to burn something recently as well. While poking around the garage, Mark would suddenly reveal that he's been stressed out lately because his car had been broken into and everything inside of it was stolen. But then, as luck would have it, on October 15th, while driving to Home Depot to buy cleaning supplies, he happened to pull over on the side street for gas, and a man would approach him and ask him if he wanted to buy a car. This man went on to say that he had just met a woman and was heading to Costa Rica for 3 months. This woman suggested that he sell his car because she'd just buy him a new one when they returned. So apparently she was quite wealthy. This man offered to sell Mark his car, and Mark kind of laughed because he couldn't afford a new car, but this man ended up asking them how much money he had on him, and when Mark said $40, the man said sold. So now Mark was the owner of a cherry red Mazda. Mark thought this man's name was also Mark, but didn't catch his last name, and the last he saw of this man was when he walked down the alley after handing Mark his keys. Police asked for a description, and Mark would essentially describe Johnny right down to his Celtic tattoo. Mark would go on to say that even though he got this car for an amazing deal, he couldn't drive it because it was manual. Since he couldn't drive manual, he asked his friend Joss to park it somewhere, which would end up being Joss's parents' house. And this news was unbelievable to police. What are the chances that this guy bought a car off someone who resembled Johnny, and Johnny was supposed to be meeting a girl at the address of the garage Mark rented? Police obviously put 2 and 2 together and asked that Mark drive back to the station to answer more questions. They'd also go visit Joss and run the VIN number on Mark's new Mazda, and shocking, it was Johnny's. So a tow truck was called and the Mazda would be impounded and sent to forensics. Police did speak with Joss a little more and learned that Joss and his family had invested $30,000 into Mark's latest film, and Joss and Mark were pretty close friends. Joss also reluctantly informed police that not too long ago, Mark had been talking about purchasing a gun and asked if Joss could be a reference on some paperwork. Back at the station, Mark started to add to his story. Remember, he had said his car was broken into. Well, he started to imply that all of his personal information was being used, and he was worried that this criminal knows where he lives. Maybe this person who sold him the car was the criminal. Another change to his story was that he pulled his car over because of a phone call and not the gas station before seeing the man who sold him his car.
And he asked me, hey buddy, do you want to buy a car? And I said, well, I'm in a car. Like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I have shacked up with this really rich lady. It's like a sugar mama kind of situation, and she's going to take care of me, and she's going to buy me a new car when we get back from a vacation that we're going to take.
Mark would also go off topic and discuss his films and the horror movie that he just finished. How he had to use a lot of fake blood because the victim in the movie was killed with a samurai sword, and it was really hard to clean. Police had had enough and went straight to telling him that they believed Mark was responsible for Johnny's disappearance. After about an hour of back and forth with Mark denying everything, Mark said he was too tired to talk and he wanted a lawyer. Police would walk him out of the station, but informed him that he would need to find another way home because they were going to take his car. Mark was obviously worried at this point because he began to tell his friends not to talk to police about him or his movies. He went on to remind everybody that they had a right to remain silent and they should exercise that right. When police were finally able to obtain their warrants, they'd search his home and take his computer as well. And some interesting things were found on his computer, but we'll get back to that. When forensics went back to the garage, they found a bottle of ammonia spotted with blood, a jug of gasoline, scissors splattered with blood, a metal table with edges stained in blood, a knife with possible blood on the handle, a tooth fragment, blood on another wooden table, the metal oil drum, paper towels, masks, gloves, industrial strength cleaner, coveralls, and drop cloths. They also circled upwards of 222 possible droplet splatters on the interior garage doors. Police would also find Johnny's blood in the trunk of the car and a post-it note in the trunk that looked like it was a reminder to clean up the kill room. In the car, Mark had also left a large hunting knife inside, still covered in blood. There was clothes, which also had blood in the belt buckle, and a pair of his sneakers had blood on them as well. Thankfully, on October 31st, 2008, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Sadly, Johnny wasn't Mark's only victim. There was an attack a few weeks before Johnny went missing on a man named Gilles Tetreault, who also met Mark while on Plenty of Fish. And just like Johnny, he thought he was talking to a female, this time named Sheena. In a book called The One Who Got Away, which was written by Gilles, he would say that he was on Plenty of Fish because he was lonely. He was newly divorced, fresh out of a 6-year relationship, and also new to Edmonton, and he didn't really know how to meet anyone. At this point, going online was starting to become a more popular way of meeting people, so he wanted to try it out. Gilles would find himself talking to a beautiful blonde lady named Sheena, whose username was spiderwebs with 2 Zs. Sheena picked Gilles based on his profile, a single man 30 to 40 years old, between 5'7" and 5'11", with an average body type. Sheena was engaging, intelligent, flirtatious, and they would hit it off. Then on October 3rd, 2008, Gilles and Sheena made plans for dinner and a movie. Gilles was asked to meet Sheena at the back of her garage to pick her up. He would later admit that meeting someone at a garage did seem to be a bit of a red flag, but mostly because she never provided a house number or a phone number in case he got lost. But he did it anyways, hopeful to meet this woman that he connected with. As soon as he entered the garage, he knew it wasn't a date at all. Gilles was attacked by someone he presumed to be a man wearing a black and gold hockey mask. The attacker had hit Gilles with a stun baton repeatedly and then knocked him to the ground. When the attacker tried to put his weapon away, Gilles would try and run out of the garage. In the book, Gilles recounts the attacker then pulling out a gun. Gilles had thought it was real, so when the attacker told him to get down on the ground with his head down, he listened. The attacker would then put duct tape over his eyes, But it was at this moment Gilles would fight back, as he was not going to die in that garage without trying to escape. He would rip the tape off his eyes, stand up, and lunge for the gun. And when he had the gun in his hand, he realized it was plastic. The two would get into a fight, and Gilles eventually wiggled out of his jacket that the attacker was holding, and then he rolled himself under the garage door. When he was almost free, the attacker grabbed his ankles and tried to pull him back into the garage. The attacker let go of his legs for just a split second, and Gilles made a move and ran out of the garage towards a walking path off the alley. Thankfully, a couple walking their dog were in the alley, and Gilles would go towards them calling for help. The attacker did follow him outside, but when he too saw the couple, he acted as though it was a joke. The masked man went back towards the garage, still wearing his hockey mask, and went inside. The couple were terrified by this encounter, and for their own safety, they didn't help, but they would call police when they got home. Gilles was able to get back to his truck and drive away, but when he got home and logged back into Plenty of Fish, Sheena's profile had been deleted. Out of embarrassment, he also didn't report the attack to police. He would eventually tell a few coworkers and some friends and family, but only because he couldn't hide the bruises on his face. A few weeks later, one of his friends called him about a recent murder they saw on the news, which sounded a lot like what Gilles has experienced. On the news, it was also mentioned that a couple saw someone escaping from a garage from a man wearing a hockey mask, and police were looking to speak with this individual. Gilles had to go to police. Gilles would testify at the murder trial, as did the couple who were walking their dog, and they remember Gilles had a welt on his head and that he fell down in front of them. They also noticed the man in the mask nearby the garage. This mask was a hockey mask, and he was also wearing a hoodie and jeans. He seemed to just stand there for a brief moment and watch them from behind a fence before turning around like nothing happened and walk back towards the garage. Mark pled not guilty at his trial for the murder of Johnny, but pled guilty to improperly interfering with a dead body, and admitted that he did lure Johnny into the garage, stab him, and cut up his body into manageable pieces. He did this after filming his movie, which was about cheating men who were lured to a garage thinking they were meeting women they met online. Then they were murdered for their cheating behavior. He would go on to say that he wanted to recreate this movie plot in real life, but wasn't actually looking to kill. He wanted to record these interactions where cheating men would come to his kill room, and he would just scare them and let them go. For publicity, he would then release these videos of men being scared of the same fictional character in his film. He hoped the people who went through this luring would talk about it after the film was released, and it would create a buzz for his new movie. Unfortunately, Johnny had died, but in Mark's version, it was self-defense. Because when Mark told Johnny that his date wasn't coming, Johnny got angry and attacked Mark first. According to Mark, it was Johnny who went and hit him with a metal pipe, so Mark had to defend himself, which resulted in Johnny losing his life. After Mark realized what he had done to Johnny, he panicked and had to get rid of the body. So he took a day to cut up the body and then put Johnny in the trunk of his car. A day or two later, he brought him to his parents' house, who weren't home, and tried to burn Johnny's remains in their backyard in the large oil drum. But it didn't work. He had poured gasoline on the body and lit it on fire, but the gas would burn and eventually go out, leaving the body mostly intact. He realized that this wasn't really working and a lot more difficult than he intended, and then he also heard sirens down the road, which scared him. So he would then take the remains to a sewer system and dump them down there. I should point out that 18 months after being arrested, while Mark was awaiting trial, he would finally reveal the location of Johnny's remains by giving police a hand-drawn map. He basically just handed over a folded piece of paper without saying a word, which led police to a sewer grate in North Edmonton. Inside the sewer, police would find the remains of a human body, which was later confirmed using DNA to be Johnny. To buy himself more time and make Johnny's disappearance more believable, Mark would go to Johnny's home, log into his computer, and send emails to his friends and employer to cover his tracks, making it seem like Johnny left town. There was lots of evidence to tie Mark to this crime, but the most damning would be found on Mark's computer. Saved on it was a written confession called SKConfessions, and this document was a 40-page story about someone's realization that they wanted to become a serial killer. It discussed a failed attempted murder as well as a successful murder. It also went on to reveal that this character had planned to start killing every Friday and use the weekend to dispose of a body. SKConfessions would be described as more of a diary by the media. It goes into detail the planning and execution of Johnny's murder. And in the days leading to that event, Mark would talk about purchasing knives, plastic sheeting, saw blades, and a cleaver. Some of the more disturbing parts of the story would be how Mark described what he did to the body, including how he chuckled when he moved Johnny's jaw up and down while making a funny voice to make it look like the body was talking. It also talked about Gilles, his first attempt of murdering a man he met online. Mark's account of the interaction with Gilles was almost identical to what Gilles had said in his testimony, which was amazing because Gilles had never read SKConfessions and didn't know about it at all. One of Mark's friends also testified at the trial, saying that Mark had messaged her on October 14th saying, quote, "This weekend I made the rounds to 2 Thanksgiving events and I also had something else keeping me busy. But I'm really concerned about telling anyone because of the implications. Suffice it to say that I crossed the line on Friday and I liked it," end quote. This friend would also go on to say that they had recently been exchanging messages that included very dark thoughts and fantasies. She had mentioned to him that she wanted to kill her ex-husband's new wife and chop her up into little pieces. Then Mark would give her detailed advice on how to kill, dispose of a body, referencing a kill room not unlike his and Dexter's, with wall-to-wall plastic sheeting. His friend never actually wanted to kill her ex-husband's new wife in a literal sense. These dark confessions were more like therapy for her, a way to let her anger out. Mark would message a few weeks later saying that his life was falling apart because of a missing persons investigation that was going on at a rental where he did film work. Also admitting police impounded his car and were searching his home, did she then start to suspect dark fantasies were perhaps more than just fantasy, and she became worried. Interestingly, before Mark was arrested, he wrote a 7-page report titled Profile of a Psychopath, which is his opinion of his own personality. He admits he thinks he's a pathological liar and extremely manipulative. So much so that he once got a pay-as-you-go cell phone, created a fake persona, and pretended to be a previous employer so that he could confirm fake employment to get approved for a mortgage. He faked bank statements, made fake letters, and it worked. He got a mortgage. He also manipulated investors who gave him thousands of dollars for his film and then used their money to pay his bills when it should have gone to producing his movie. Joss, his good friend, was one of those people. Another time, he was caught by his ex-wife on Plenty of Fish, and of course lied about why he was on dating sites. He went to the extent of creating a fake email account, pretending to be a manager of an online publishing company, and sent himself emails to suggest writing an article about online dating and to do some real-life research. Again, he purchased another pay-as-you-go phone, set up a voicemail for this made-up person so he could prove to his wife that this made-up person was real and he was in fact doing research on Plenty of Fish. She did eventually leave him because she caught him several more times. He says he doesn't have remorse for his lies or compassion, and any emotion he does show is just for show. He had often fantasized about killing people, and killing someone was more of an experience, an experiment, if you will, like doing drugs or smoking cigarettes. Mark also wrote another book on his views of religion, which I won't go into, but basically he thinks it's for suckers. Thankfully, Mark was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison on April 12, 2011. In Canada, he will be allowed to apply for parole in 25 years. The trial was so gruesome and emotional that each juror was offered counseling services, which isn't typical to happen in Canadian courts. While in prison, Mark has created a profile on a website that connects inmates with the outside world. His says he's looking for a mutual fulfilling friendship, and he expects to be out of jail in 2027, which isn't even possible. He likes artwork, he's philosophical, and has a great sense of humor. He enjoys the rain, tennis, chess, and storytelling. He is looking for an intelligent, open-minded woman he could possibly share a long weekend with every few months. Apparently, inmates pay $35 a year to add their profiles, and there are no laws against this. My thoughts? I am very happy to hear that he is behind bars and that his first victim got away. I wish Johnny could also have escaped, and I feel terrible for his family and friends. But thank God Mark was caught only after one kill, because I'm not sure he ever would have stopped. His self-diagnosis may be true, but regardless, he is a danger to society. I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but shows like Dexter isn't to blame. Movies, music, TV, guns, knives, cars isn't the reason why people kill, and I stand behind that. There is some correlation that people have killed after watching shows such as Dexter, and Mark wasn't the first, and he probably won't be the last, but a TV show can't create a psychopath. We've had serial killers before Dexter, and people who kill were probably gonna do it anyways. That's just my opinion. I have zero experience in psychology. I'd love to know what you think. Thanks again for joining me here at Felony Spectator. That's it for today. Please hit subscribe to support my channel, and we will see you soon.